Hello and welcome to today's lecture. Today's lecture is on Chapter 12, which is preparing your speech. So, it's time to get ready. I know you're nervous, but after today's lecture, you're going to feel a lot more confident on what you need to do. So, we talked about your audience. I've mentioned numerous times that your audience is the number one thing that you need to consider before preparing your speech, regardless of the type of speech it is, the setting, or the situation. So, when you're thinking about your audience, there's certain things that you need to take into consideration. Who are they? Why are they here? And more importantly, why should they care about what you have to share with them? Analyzing your audience involves looking at their demographics. And demographics are used to analyze characteristics of your audience that can help you mention specific ways that your information will be interesting or useful to your listeners. Audience demographics could include their age, background, socioeconomic status, their political affiliation, anything that will help you understand who they are. You can analyze your audience by possibly doing a survey with them and finding out their feelings and their attitudes, beliefs, and values on your topic. And that will certainly give you some very useful information that you can use to tailor your speech appropriately. Now, audience attitudes and beliefs are important, but experts in the audience analysis suggest that speakers concentrate on values. And values are important because they're more likely to be shared by larger numbers of people. Remember, the one common thread that your audience has in our class is that they're college students. So try and focus on what a college student goes through. And who knows better than that than you? Audience's perception of the occasion, especially in a college class, requires a high level of thought and intelligence without being boring or humorless. Let's face it, you're going to listen to a lot of speeches, so why not make yours super interesting and memorable? So you want to think about your audience and who they are, and you want to think about their similarities and their differences, because this is vital. Now, when you're planning your speech, you need to consider your topic. Your topic is super important, and I actually allow you to choose your topic because I want you to speak about something that you care about. But remember, when you choose your topic, it has to be appropriate to you, your audience, and the occasion. So you need to consider all three of those things. You also want to think about maybe a topic that's relevant in today's world. So check the news. What's a hot topic? What's out there? You also want to think about your purpose statement. And as you've heard me say before, your purpose statement is what you want your audience to do or to know after listening to your speech. So you want to make sure it's well worded. Your purpose statement also needs to be specific, achievable, and relevant. So what do I mean by that? When I say specific, I mean very narrowed down. So specific is the opposite of vague, right? So you want to be very concrete on what you want your audience to do or to know. Achievable means, can you talk about this in the time limit that you have? And relevant, of course, means the relevancy and the importance to the audience. Remember, this needs to be established or the audience is not going to listen to you. You also want to work on your thesis. Your thesis is the central or the main idea of your speech in one sentence. And it's the most important takeaway for your audience because it is what your speech is about in one sentence. Now, when you gather your research and your information to use as your support, you need to understand that you need to use research that is credible, objective, and current. You need to vet this. You need to make sure that you're finding this information from other sources. And speaking of which, you need to be very aware and beware of fake news and misinformation. Just because it's out there on the internet doesn't mean that it's true. So make sure that you check your sources and you use good and credible sources. Now, I'm going to share with you 3 ways to evaluate online information. First thing you need to consider is your information trustworthy? Is it from a reliable source? You can look at where the website comes from. So if it's a .edu, it comes from a university or a school. If it's a .gov, it comes from the government. If it's a .com, it's a commercial website, and their main goal is to sell you something. So that may not be the most biased or objective source for you to consider. You also want, so first thing was trustworthy. The second thing was unbiased. And we talked about making sure something is unbiased and also current. Is the information updated? If you were having a surgery, would you want them to use medical techniques that were developed in the 1940s or the newest and latest and greatest medical advancements? Of course you'd want the latest and greatest, wouldn't we all? So make sure that your information is the most up-to-date as possible. So when you structure your speech, you need to make sure that you follow a structured speech outline with the basic speech elements of the introduction, the body, and the conclusions. So I'm going to be going over each of these sections in much detail, but I want to explain that in the body of your speech, you're going to be using supporting material that helps bolster the three main points that you're going to be sharing with your audience. And these supporting material come from the research that you're going to be conducting through the various research sources that you find through the Georgia Highlands College Library and other sources such as interviews, surveys, and anything else that you can find that would be relevant to help you in this project. So let's look at the different types of supporting material. You could add definitions. A definition, simply, you could look up Webster's dictionary for the word that you're going to define the word, cite the dictionary, and bam, there you've got a source and a type of supporting material. Examples are a specific case of a general idea, and that's a type of support. You can use statistics, which are basically facts in numerical form. Now remember, anytime you use any type of statistic, you need to cite where this information comes from. You could also use analogies or compare and contrast something. Now, if you use a comparison or contrast, or if you use an analogy, you might use what is called a simile or a metaphor. So let me review with you what these are. A simile uses the words like or as in them, whereas a metaphor is an implied comparison that does not use like or as. So let me give you an example of each. A simile would be to say like a tidal wave. Okay? And the metaphor would be a tidal wave of refugees. So as you could see, the metaphor did not have the word like in it. Now, there are different other types of supporting material that you can use, such as anecdotes, which are a brief story. Remember, stories endear you and build rapport with your audience, especially if the story is about you. It makes it more personal. You can also use quotations or testimony, and all of these things are vital to having good support for your speech outline. And remember, I'm looking for a variety of support. So if you give me a speech outline and a speech and all you do is rattle off statistics and stats throughout the entire speech, I'm going to say that there's not enough variety of support. So make sure that you get your information and you get them from good quality vetted sources, and you use a different variety of information. It's also important that you give proper citation of your information, and we're going to make sure that you not only properly cite your sources in the body of your speech, you're going to do this orally, and you're also going to make sure that your MLA is properly cited as well, that you have a works cited with the proper citation format for each of your different sources. And when you cite your information, you want to state where the information comes from first and then the information. So for example, you could say, according to the Harvard Business Review in a December 2019 article entitled, "Why Saving for Your Future Starts Now," Dr. I. M. Rich stated that, blah, 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 blah. So remember, proper citation is vital during your speeches. Now let's go back to the proper speech outline and the proper speech structure. We talked about how you have to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So the introduction and the conclusion are about 10 to 15% of your overall speech. The body of your speech is going to be about 70 to 80% of your speech. So when you're actually structuring and working on your outline, I advise you to work on your body first, because the intro and the conclusion is rather simple in comparison. So of course you have to figure out your topic and narrow that down. Of course, have your purpose. Is this speech to inform? Is it to persuade? You have to have your thesis, what your speech is about in one sentence. You're going to have your purpose statement, what your audience wants, what you want your audience to do or to know as a result of listening to your speech. You're going to have your sources. You're going to have your value statement, why your audience should care about your speech. And then you want to preview your 3 main points. So your introduction is going to be vital. And you want to outline your speech as you plan it so you can effectively organize your ideas. You also want to make note cards, and I cannot stress how important the note cards are. You're going to be limited to 5 one-sided note cards only, which I will collect at the end of your speech. I want to make sure that you don't write too many words on these note cards, because if not, your eye contact will be directed to your note cards and not at your audience where they should be. You also want to organize your ideas in a logical pattern that will effectively help you develop your thesis. So depending on what your topic is, if you're talking about major world wars, you will probably use a chronological pattern, because you're going to talk about World War I before you talk about World War II. So again, think about the logic of your organizational pattern as you're putting your body together. Now, let's talk about the introduction. So the introduction, as I said earlier, is about 10 to 15% of your speech. And the introduction serves many purposes. The first and foremost is to capture your audience's attention. And we're going to talk about different ways to capture your audience's attention, but I'll tell you one surefire way not to capture your audience's attention. And that's to say, "Hi, my name is Alex, and today I'm going to be talking about koalas." All right, never start out with, "Hi, my name is, and today I'm going to be talking about," because that just puts me to sleep, and it's definitely not going to get your audience interested in what you have to say. The introduction should also preview your main points, and that should be actually the last thing you say in your introduction prior to transitioning into the body of your speech. The introduction serves to set the mood and the tone of your speech. Obviously, if you're going to be talking about drug abuse or child abuse, these are serious topics and they are not to be taken lightly. So you should have a serious tone and demeanor when giving a speech on said topic. You also want to demonstrate the importance of your topic to your audience. That's done in the value statement, because again, if your audience does not understand and appreciate the value or why or what's in it for them, why should they care? They're not going to listen to you. And honestly, the introduction sets the tone for your credibility. And again, the ethos, the speaker credibility is determined by you, the audience. So again, the more prepared you are, the more organized you are, and the more confident you are, the more likely you are to build your credibility with your audience. So we talked about ways to capture your audience's attention. I said that the very first thing that comes out of your mouth in a speech is not "Hi, my name is." It's your attention getter. So what should you say to get your audience's attention besides "Hi, my name is"? Well, I'm going to give you several things that you can do. First thing you can do is refer to the audience. Easy to do. The second thing, refer to the occasion. If this is a special occasion, if it's a birthday, if it's an anniversary, if it's a wedding, refer to the occasion at hand. Refer to the relationship between the audience and the subject. Remember, There's a relationship on what you're going to be talking about and how it's relevant to them. Refer something that's familiar to the audience. Remember, familiarity endears you to the audience. You want to build that connection and build the rapport with your audience. You may want to cite a startling fact, of course, or citation, properly cited, of course. Nothing gets an audience's attention than a startling piece of information. You may want to ask your audience a hypothetical question. That's a good way to start a speech. You might want to tell an anecdote or a story. You might want to use a quotation. That's another way to start a speech. Or you might even start off by telling a joke. Please remember that it must be appropriate and you should never, ever offend the audience, ever. So those are about 8 or 9 ways that you could possibly start a speech other than saying, "Hi, my name is." Why don't you give it some thought and see how you might be able to start your speech? Because once you have them hooked, then you have to keep them hooked. So remember, your body must be well organized, well planned, and you must use transitions to connect one main point to the next. The final stage of your speech structure is the conclusion, and that's another 10 to 15% of your speech. And basically, the goals of the conclusion are to restate your thesis, review your main points, and end on a memorable and interesting note. Now, one thing that you have to do during your conclusion is to state a break light. And a break light is a signal word that indicates to your audience that you're about to wrap up. My personal favorite is in conclusion, but you could certainly say other things such as to wrap things up today or in summation, etc. Either way, make sure that your audience knows you're about to wrap up. Make sure that you restate your thesis, restate each of your main points, and end in an interesting and memorable manner so that your audience will leave your speech wanting to know more. So today we've talked about basic speech structure of the introduction, body, and conclusion, how to analyze your audience and plan your speech, and just the importance of being audience-centered and aware of who you're speaking with. So remember, you can do it. You just have to put the time, the effort, the energy into understanding your audience, understanding your topic, getting great research, properly citing your sources, and planning a killer introduction and a memorable conclusion. So I'm looking forward to hearing your speeches in the near future. I thank you for tuning in today and watching this lecture, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.